To begin, I'd like to acknowledge the sovereignty of the Gadigal, Wongal and Bidjigal peoples of the Eora Nation and the Darug and Barramadigal peoples of the Darug Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the country on which I live, work and research. I want to pay my deep respects to them as knowledge holders and future thinkers. My acknowledgement intends to intervene in the cycles of harm and dispossession that have continued since colonisation and include them in any thinking about urban futures on their unceded land. This presentation is about research into community-led activities of reuse and repair in 2 local government areas in Western Sydney, Australia, and responds to themes about local scale and community agency posed by the conference track titled Community Design and User Autonomy at AMPS or AMPS Urban Futures Cultural Paths 2024. I'm Alison Gill from Western Sydney University and I'm presenting on behalf of my co-author Mellick Lopes. Thanks for this opportunity to present our research from a recent chapter by Mellick Lopes and myself titled Commoning Repair, Framing a Community Response to Transitioning Waste Economies, published in Design/Repair by Palgrave Macmillan in December 2023. In circular economy policy and reform agendas gaining traction in Australia, which follow international approaches, reuse and repair are positioned near the top of a hierarchy that defines an appropriate social response to the problem of waste. Along with refuse and reduce, repair and reuse are seen as key to the development of a circular economic alternative and the disruption of take-make-waste linear approaches to business as usual. However, while these activities are considered higher-order forms of circularity, in practice they are often less visible and receive less attention and support than lower-order circular activities, like recycling. In the everyday context of the very urgent and consuming waste management work by local councils in Greater Sydney, we present evidence in this chapter of reuse and repair activity that would be of great interest to councils because it aligns well with the ambitious targets to recover 80% of resources from all waste streams going to landfill by 2030. We bring together insights of 2 studies of community reuse and repair activities in local government areas in Western Sydney, in the cities of Parramatta and Canterbury Bankstown, 2 large council areas or local government areas. We propose that amongst the first tasks in the transition to a circular economy is creating a repair commons that better includes the contributions of local civic society. A repair commons is a vision of how to leverage local repair economies and community reuse activities we discovered that we frame as a community response to circular reforms. I just want to spend a moment to articulate the conceptual framework we use to frame a repair commons, which joins concepts from design about repair together with community economies scholarship and social practice theory. From a design perspective, as design researchers, we see repair as a regenerative design practice with a radical agency in bringing diagnostic socio-material intelligences to hand. In our reframing of repair as taking things apart as much as fixing them, we enact a reflective role for repair that Graham and Thrift describe as a means by which societies learn. And employing a community economies lens to identify the dimensions of a commons, referred to in our paper as an identikit, we create a vignette of a repair commons in a locality. The commons are defined as the properties, resources and knowledges shared by a community. And we seek to expand on the typology of commons by foregrounding the materiality of our lives with designed things, or what sociologist Elizabeth Shove refers to as matters of practice, i.e., that is the infrastructures, devices and resources along with skills and the values associated with practices, in articulating a material sociology of repair. So repair involves people trying to accomplish things and acts with and through what they have to hand, and it has a radical agency to make an ongoing living place for what is destined, for materials that are destined for storage, scrap or landfill. At the heart of our chapter sits a story of a first-hand experience of a bike repair. The picture shows a cyclist pointing to a crack in an aluminium frame of a commuter bike, a Ritchie from Reno in the US, rendering it unsafe to ride, because aluminium is not as strong as older steel frames and the fracture can propagate quickly. This experience revealed for us very early in our research the potential of a repair commons and the elements or dimensions of commoning. Attending to this crack involved consulting a local cycle shop, exploring if it's possible to replace the frame with a new one with the hope of reusing forks and wheels, learning that US importers only supply parts for models in 7-year cycles, and eventually an option to repair the aluminium frame arose, but it meant mailing the bike to another city, Melbourne. Then the local cycle shop found a local repairer in their client network who offered to help and proposed to weld the frame, requiring a special tool to work on the inside and outside of the frame by taking off the headset, with only a small scar then showing on the repaired bike. So this experience revealed to the cyclist an unexpected network across commercial and formal entities, their clients and community-based economies. The distribution of expertise and resources through a local community. It articulates the locally situated commoning practices that take place in communities everywhere, and how actors in this story deploy and adapt in plural ways, sustaining repair by sharing skills, material, property and knowledge to advance the interests of a community. The key points from this experience that have informed our thinking about commons for many years are how the experience figures a civic identity of the commoner and the shared custodianship of cycling as a practice. The custodianship surpasses individual responsibility of a consumer and the caretaking of an individual object to instead enmesh cyclist and bike in communal ways of living. I'll sketch out how our framework for repair commons was developed from observing local community reuse and repair activities in the two studies of two council areas in Western Sydney, in the cities of Parramatta and Canterbury Bankstown. We set out to investigate what are widely held to be invisible, diminishing, outlier practices, part of maintenance networks in the shadows of consumption and governance. We felt it was feasible to propose that there's a better chance of enrolling the public in circular reforms with a nuanced understanding of existing reuse and repair practices invisibly underway in communities. We were excited to identify and map 106 repair services in the city of Parramatta. The study identified 88 commercial and 18 informal repair services for cars, electronics, bikes and clothing alteration. And the numbers on the map show their close proximity to each other in the CBD of Parramatta and its neighbouring North Parramatta. From searches of literature and directories, the pilot survey found 88 commercial or professional services, that is discrete businesses with a shop front or established mobile operations, and 18 informal repairers, that is independent, on the side or after hours services. As well, it identified non-profit organisations, charities and education providers either doing or teaching repair. Also, the study analysed government communications about what residents should do with unwanted household goods, with no mention of nearby repair services in public programs. From mapping these services, we gained insight into the grouping and co-location of services to facilitate local access and sharing of resources by a community, which was richly suggestive of commoning possibilities. The role of independent or third-party repairers, along with informal repair services and the social infrastructures they are a part of, are largely absent in public programs. They constitute a missing middle in policy agendas and communications that instead largely characterise repair as an individual consumer choice. So we have a side of this geography of repair infrastructure at the local scale to address what Lane and Watson refer to as a neglected scale of action in the meso-level of social collectives. That is, small-scale enterprises of shop fronts in commercial precincts, back rooms and workshops, tool sheds, client networks and suppliers, and their sustaining connections to social precincts and neighbourhoods. We argue that this neglected scale of local activity is critical for governments to account for, as it reveals a scalar imaginary of a local network with contacts beyond the immediate area. When coupled with the lessons from Canterbury Bankstown local government area, which is not far from Parramatta, we propose that the circular economy ambitions would be better met through activating existing community reuse strategies. Turning to the study of Canterbury Bankstown's social circularity, some background and the main findings from the study are shown here on the screen. The Institute of Culture and Society at Western Sydney University was approached in 2019 to support the Canterbury Bankstown Council in their engagement with residents about the delivery of waste services and education initiatives. Council had perceived several challenges with trying to close the gap or close the loop on waste as it tried to come to grips with ambitious waste diversion targets in a culturally diverse and densifying city. The study aimed to work with Council using workshop methods to develop community engagement activities more aligned with culturally diverse residents in response to what Council perceived were problematic approaches with recycling and dumping, considered to indicate a lack of care for place. With an undue focus on and frequently punitive response to illegal dumping and recycling, the Council were missing common practices that show care for place and social circularity. Evidence of social circularity was found in informal and lively economies of exchange, including gifting and sharing amongst friends and relatives, as a relatively widespread route to reuse, and central to cohesive migrant community networks. Also, evidence of careful gifting, packaging and recirculation of what one resident termed good waste were found, frequently using the street-side verge outside of dwellings as a waste commons. That is, we see here a picture of the packaging of items to provide protection from the weather, or the arrangement as items like they would be indoors that lounge together with a coffee table, as if to promote reuse. And we found widespread repair skills and routine engagement with the repair of clothing and furniture, maintenance, restoration and repurposing of furniture items in households and garages. We noted that electronic product repair was more of a challenge to manage at a community level, and there were contingencies like access to rare and diminishing spaces in private units and homes like garages for this type of work. And finally, 500 registered non-government organisations with involvements in a wide range of social and cultural activities suggest a potential civic life and commons infrastructure specific to the complexion of Canterbury Bankstown to support circular activities. So in these two studies, we found evidence that the transition to a shared responsibility for material cultures is already underway in civic spaces and could assist in meeting agendas for enrolling the public in circularity. Based on these hopeful signs, we observed in these studies that bring evidence of community economies together with responsibility and care for matters of practice. We created a vignette or imagining of a locality commoning repair. So what does a repair commons look and feel like? In Take Back the Economy, Gibson-Graham et al. Identikit articulates the typology of a commons. It shows that commons need to be cared for and sustained by the communities that derive benefits from them. A commons enables wide and shared access to property for members, negotiated use of property by a community, a distribution of benefits to the community, the performance of care by community members. And responsibility for property must be assumed by community members. Also, property is open to any form of ownership, private, state, or open access. So these are some of the common elements and dimensions of a commons. Highlighted in orange are characteristics of a repair commons and an image of a community enacting and negotiating a civic circularity. For example, access to civic infrastructure, repair cafes, commercial repairers, festivals in parks, street-facing garages. These are spaces and resources sustaining the repair commons. Council-sponsored liaison officers to assist with this sustaining of the commons. Councils document and share data on use and commoning via research partnerships with universities. Looking at the benefits of commoning, there are many beneficiaries, include commoners, council, and the biophysical commons, which are inseparable from social relations. The exercising of appropriate care in mixed-use spaces, sorting, cleaning, packing, would be underway with clear expectations and terms of use for these diverse spaces. And commoners participate in collaborative governance arrangements, co-design processes, and collective decision-making. Diverse civic spaces are mainstays of the repair commons, with easy access to members to property that is privately and collectively owned. In concluding remarks to frame what we found on the ground as a community response to the circular economy at a local scale, the studies found there is a missing middle in circular economy policy and practice, constituted by the informal community economies and third-party repairers operating with or without shop fronts in retail precincts or social enterprises. That is evidence of an existing civic infrastructure that requires sustaining. We found that geographies of repair matter. The co-location of commoning repair taking place in households, neighbourhoods, social and commercial precincts matter in transitions to shared material stewardship. The vignette of a repair commons allows us to think with the world and make other possibilities visible amid the world we have now, citing Miller and Gibson-Graham, and constitute a thinking towards transformation pathways that demand resetting the relationship between local government, commercial and non-government organisations and communities. The civic trust that exists between people in communities and is very much at play in our small stories. It's overlooked by councils steeped in the behaviour change way of thinking. Inviting communities to explore forms of collaborative governance of reuse and repair practices, as imagined in our Repair Commons Identity Kit, might be a way councils could demonstrate a recognition and respect of community knowledge and expertise, an action of civic trust that might itself be considered a form of repair.